Exotic power, erotic flower. This is a commissioned piece. Zecora? Apple Bloom yelled out, bursting through the door, her clothes covered in dirt and leaves as she entered the hut. Come inside, it's time you rested. You have the item I requested. The zebra inside greeted, slowly stirring a mysterious brew in a large black cauldron. Apple Bloom saluted with one hand, a fistful of crimson, exotic-looking flowers in the other. Yes, ma'am. After Apple Bloom had grown up into a mature adult and gotten her QE mark in alchemy, she decided to help Zecora out creating potions and discovering the secrets of the Everfree Forest. There was never a dull day in her work. The two of them would go out to get their ingredients for potions and brew them to give or sell to those in Equestria. When she didn't go back home to Sweet Apple Acres after a tiring night, she would either spend the night at the hut or at Fluttershy's cottage. Very good. While the brew does settle, add the ingredients petal by petal. Zecora smiled, stepping aside to let her assistant add the final ingredient. Apple Bloom wiped the sweat off of her forehead, tiredly walking towards the cauldron. It wasn't easy getting these flowers, but it was much easier than outwitting that chimera from her fillyhood. She plucked the petals off of the flower, letting them fall into the concoction, sinking in as the brew slowly changed color to a bright crimson and pink. What exactly will this do, Zecora? The zebra put her hand on her assistant's shoulder. I'm glad you asked, and here's my answer. This brew will be a libido enhancer. Libido... what now? A libido shoots one's arousal higher, further increasing sexual desire. Apple Bloom pointed to some other bottles filled with a mystical brew, her brow furrowed in suspicion. Don't you already got stuff like that? Zecora shook her head as she stirred. While those potions do the deed, this brew will bring out one's inner need. And what does that mean exactly? She smiled. Perhaps I should show you by example. Would you care to try a sample? She began to pour the mixture in the bottle, extinguishing the fire after to make sure the cauldron's contents wouldn't overheat. Apple Bloom laughed nervously. Are you sure this is okay, Zecora? She's only turned 18 a few months ago. Was she really ready to test an aphrodisiac? There is no need to fret. This experience will be fun, I bet. Zecora grinned, giving the bottle to Apple Bloom. She looked down, examining the content. The pink and crimson-colored concoction was bubbling, yet warm, not boiling hot, like she initially thought. Well, if you say so. She put her lips to the bottle and began to down it in one go. Zecora drinks her share of the brew, already looking at her apprentice with lustful eyes. Tell me, Apple Bloom, how do you feel? Can you sense the potion's appeal? Apple Bloom blinked slowly, her body beginning to heat up. Like a volcano erupted in her chest. She started to feel lightheaded, her heart pounding in her chest. Oh, whoa. This is weird. I feel all hot and dizzy. Everything will be okay. Those symptoms will soon go away. Zecora patted her shoulder, kissing her forehead. She giggled, already feeling the lust gain to her head. She began to take off her robes, revealing her naked, voluptuous form. I think I can guarantee that you will like what you see. Apple Bloom gasped. She had never seen Zecora naked before. She didn't know why, but suddenly her naked body suddenly got incredibly alluring, and she wanted it more than ever. I have my needs that we can do, but how about we start with you? Zecora nodded, rubbing her breasts together. She wanted to be courteous, and she knew that they were close, and that there would be no odd feelings between them. After all, this was all in good fun. She quickly began to take her clothes off, showing off her small but pert breasts. She would normally be embarrassed and self-conscious about her body, but the potion released her inhibitions. What should I do? Inhibitions gone, she was still unsure of the situation she was in, the mix interfering with her logic. Zecora licked her lips as she eyed her body. There is nothing you need to hide. Let your instincts be your guide. Zecora's booty sways back and forth, waiting in anticipation for Apple Bloom to make her move. I, uh, I don't know what to do. She pants heavily, her mind getting more muddled as the effects overwhelmed her mind. You have already downed the drink. Just tell me your biggest kink. Zecora moaned, pressing her own breasts together as she leans closer to the aroused mare, raising her eyebrows curiously. I can't. It's too embarrassing. She shook her head, too embarrassed to reveal her fetish to anyone. Even Zecora, although her eyes began to drift down to Zecora's bare, dirty feet. Zecora rubs her shoulders, trying to calm her down. Do not worry about your pride. Your fetish you don't have to hide. If you share, I will not judge. I will not hold any grudge. I do not intend to annoy. Just tell me what you enjoy. Zecora sits down, patiently waiting for Apple Bloom to get comfortable. The Earth Pony shivers, staring at Zecora's gray soles. She just wanted to reach out and rub and kiss and lick all over them. Her nether started to moisten as she fantasized about sticking her nose in between her toes and having them rub all over her face. Before she knew it, her hands already grabbed onto Zecora's feet. Zecora smiled, wiggling her toes as the yellow hands caressed her soles. So, it's my feet that you find attractive? Then how about we make this more interactive? The zebra chuckled, scooting closer to plant her soles on her cheeks. Zecora had no problem with the foot fetish. In fact, she rather enjoyed it. She adored getting pedicures at the Ponyville spa, and she was almost always barefoot, loving the feel of the grass between her toes. She had a small foot fetish herself, as well as a few other kinks, but she never got to indulge in them with others. This will be one exhilarating experience. Apple Bloom began to drool as two soft soles pressed against her face, blushing madly as she feels the dirty soles against her face. The feeling was fantastic, Zecora's soles rubbing up and down her cheeks. She shivered in glee, reveling in how lovely the feel of feet was. She had often gotten sniffs of her siblings' shoes, and even a few sniffs of the Crusaders' feet during sleepovers. But she had never had a chance to indulge in her fetish. She felt like she could orgasm just from the zebra's feet touching her. Zecora chuckles, tapping her toes against her cheek. Apple Bloom, do you find it sweet when I rub you with my feet? Zecora eyes Apple Bloom's feet, already thinking of things that could be done down there with their feet. This is wonderful. She sighs, grabbing Zecora's ankles, making her feet press harder against her face, covering her face with dirt. Zecora grins, rubbing her big toes against the bridge of her nose. Do you enjoy it when my toes rub against your little nose? Well, your feet are a bit dirty. She smiles nervously, wanting to get some clean feet. She was aware that Zecora went barefoot constantly, but it would be nice for her first real foot experience to have clean soles. Zecora nods, standing up. I get what you implied. I'll do what I can so you're satisfied. She beckons her apprentice. I have an idea. Instead, we move from here to my bed. Apple Bloom springs up, following as she stares at Zecora's large rear, swaying back and forth. Zecora patted the side of the bed. Come, my dear, why don't you sit? I will be with you in a bit. She bit her lip, still under the control of the potion, as she went to get some water. Apple Bloom jumped on the bed, giggling as she bounces up and down in anticipation, fantasizing wildly as she waited, using her finger to assist her. First, she would scrub Zecora's feet, making her laugh wildly. She always got held down and tickled by her siblings, and this may be her opportunity to be the tickler for once. Then she would lick all over her clean soles, getting the natural taste for her feet, the dirt now free. She can indulge in her large, beautiful feet, and... Apple Bloom realized she had climaxed from the fantasy, staining the blanket. She looked down at the mess she had made and blushed furiously with embarrassment. Uh-oh. It appears that you have stained my sheet. Are you ready to scrub my feet? Zecora grinned, entering the door with a bucket of water in her hand. Apple Bloom jumped, grinning sheepishly as she rubbed her feet together. Zecora, I'm sorry, she said, trying to explain herself. Zecora shook her head, placing a finger on her lips. There's no need to worry. I could fix it in a hurry. The zebra chuckled softly at Apple Bloom's unnecessary panic, pouring liquid soap into the bucket, getting the water soapy. Now, I have water from the stream, so our souls will sparkle, shine, and gleam. She gets out a pedicure scrub brush, handing it to Apple Bloom as she joins her on the bed, propping her feet up. No more need to delay. Come now, and scrub away. Apple Bloom grinned, unable to contain her excitement, as she dipped the brush into the soapy water as she eagerly scrubbed her dirty soles. So tell me, Zecora, are you ticklish? Zecora cracked a smile, trying to stifle her laughter as she tried to respond. Indeed, I am. So make it quick. I fear that I am prone to kick. Apple Bloom continued, wrapping her arm around her ankle while the gray feet were scrubbed mercilessly with the brush. It felt good to be in power. To get someone laughing helplessly turned her on like crazy. And laugh helplessly is exactly what Zecora did. Her legs bounced up and down as she tried to prevent herself from kicking Apple Bloom in the face. She had no idea she was so ticklish, but both her and Apple Bloom were about to find out exactly. Kitchy kitchy coo, Zecora. Apple Bloom chuckled to herself, dragging the ticklish bristles under her slender gray toes. Zecora clutched her sides, laughing wildly as her toes curled and uncurled under the tickling brush. Her gold rings jingled as they clanged together. Apple Bloom, please don't make this a chore. I beg you. No more. Zecora squealed. Yet Apple Bloom didn't feel Zecora try to pull her feet away once. Apple Bloom persisted, the bristles washing away all the dirt and dust from Zecora's feet, scrubbing all over her foot, continuing even after they were cleaned, just to hear her laugh. Apple Bloom reveled in these few moments, tickling as much as possible before finally giving up, giving her time to breathe. She panted, rubbing her feet to soothe the ticklish feeling, but still giggling from her tickle high. Sorry, did I get carried away? Apple Bloom chuckled, rubbing the back of her head as she put her feet on the bed as well. Zecora said nothing, reaching for the scrub brush as she grinned mischievously. Apple Bloom tilted her head back, confused, as she slowly noticed her own feet were dirty. Oh no, please, Zecora, I'm sorry, okay? You still have much to learn, as you will soon find out it's your turn. Zecora softly chuckled, grabbing Apple Bloom's small feet and scrubbing the dirt off as well. Apple Bloom started to snicker, quickly trying to pull her foot away. Zecora, stop! Not a chance, for I have found it's best to be on even ground. She chuckled, mimicking what Apple Bloom did to her, wrapping her arm around her ankles and vigorously scrubbing her soles. Apple Bloom squealed, grabbing onto the bedsheet as she squealed. Oh my God! Oh, no more! She begged, her plan on getting some tickles and backfiring on her. Zecora didn't say anything, only replying by making circles on her feet with the brush, the soapy bristles gliding across the tender surface. Zecora, they're clean, okay? Apple Bloom laughed, trying to yank her ankles away. They're clean. I still have much to do, including teasing. Kitschy cooed, she taunted, sweeping the brush under the curling toes. I hope that I don't cross the line, admitting this is a fetish of mine. There's nothing I'd rather go after than some tickle-induced laughter. She blushed, revealing her own desire. Unlike before, Apple Bloom's feet were still rather dirty. All that running around for ingredients while Zecora mainly stayed barefoot in and around her hut made a huge difference. This called for some more intense, frequent, ticklish scrubbing. Unfortunately for Apple Bloom, the tickling was near unbearable. However, there was one good thing. Zecora had placed her clean soles within her reach. Unintentional or not, this was a golden opportunity for her. She could tickle back, or she could just play with the soft feet presented in front of her. The potion's effect meant that Zecora wouldn't mind either way. Apple Bloom didn't even mind that much, that her feet were being tickled mercilessly. Zecora let out a soft moan as she scrubbed, her nether regions dripping wet. "You'll find the targets I choose are your precious little toes," she muttered as the brushing continued, shifting her position so that her own feet were closer to her ticklee's face. Apple Bloom buried her muzzle into the clean, gray soles, laughing into her feet as her face reddened from arousal and laughter exhaustion. The aroused zebra continued to scrub, rubbing herself with her free hand, edging closer to her orgasm. Cleaning Apple Bloom's toes went by significantly faster than her soles, and even though they were clean, she kept scrubbing to sate her fetish. "Just so we're clear, I am very, very near," she moaned. "Hurry up!" she squealed, sticking her toes in her mouth to muffle her laughter. The ticklish scrubbing stopped as Zecora finally hit her climax, creating another stain in the bed sheets. After releasing her juices, she lies limp on the bed, her toes still being suckled by Apple Bloom. "While I lie on the bed sheets, what will you do with my feet?" Apple Bloom was practically slobbering all over her toes, sticking as many as she could into her mouth and suckling on them. As she sucked, she swore she could taste the potion. Had Zecora dipped her feet in the cauldron when she wasn't looking? Either way, she was still intoxicated by the tender toes, feeling like she could orgasm just from sucking on them. Meanwhile, Zecora lies back on the bed, wiggling her toes to brush against Apple Bloom's tongue as she suckled. To occupy herself, she began to play with Apple Bloom's big toes, wiggling them back and forth. As her toes were wiggled, Apple Bloom darted her tongues in and out between the soft gray toes, getting a more natural taste of Zecora's feet without the dirt added in. Later moving onto the soles, dragging her tongue up and down the surface. If Apple Bloom could describe the taste in one word, it would be exotic. Zecora hummed quietly to herself, dragging a single finger up and down the apple-bucking soles. She didn't want to interrupt what Apple Bloom was doing, but she just wanted to relieve herself of the boredom. A soft moan escaped from Apple Bloom's lips, then another, until she was practically screaming into the pair of soles in front of her. The tickling didn't bother her that much anymore. She was more focused on licking every centimeter of her feet with her tongue. "Zecora, how long will this last?" "The effects, I should think, wear off 1 hour after the drink. But there is no need to jump the gun. We still have plenty of time for fun," Zecora reassured her, tapping her big toe against her cheek. "Oh, whew. Good." Apple Bloom sighed, pushing Zecora's feet against her chest, wanting to feel her soles against her naked body. As Zecora lovingly nuzzles her toes, she wiggles her own against the flat chest. "How about we do good deeds and satisfy each other's needs? You lick my feet, then I'll tickle you crazy, so much that your mind will start to be hazy." Apple Bloom ponders the proposal for a moment. However, it wasn't a tough decision. She could surely take a little tickling, right? "Deal," she grinned, spreading her legs apart, placing Zecora's right foot on her wet pussy. Can I ask you to?" The zebra nodded, already moving her foot up and down, her soles rubbing against her lips. "To put my feet to the test and make you come? I'll do my best." Apple Bloom quickly muffles her moan with a big toe. Thank you," She begins her foot-course meal by wiping off the saliva on the bedsheet, wanting to taste her soul once more. If there's anything else, just ask. I shall be up to the task. Zecora laid back by the foot of the bed, hands behind her head, as she idly rubbed a single foot up and down, already sending Apple Bloom into loud moans. Apple Bloom wasted no time lapping away, dragging her tongue in small circles on the center of the smooth, clean sole. Her nose plunged right under the toes, sniffing as she laps away. Zecora bit her lips, spreading her toes apart to let Apple Bloom indulge herself, stroking her inner walls with her big toe. Apple Bloom couldn't help herself, burrowing her nose right by her toes, sniffing away as she moans loudly, licking at the sole with fervor. She could feel herself all ready to release her juices all over Zecora's foot, but she wanted to hold on. She wanted to savor every last lick. Nibble, sniff, and kiss she gave. She had to hold on. She didn't want it all to end. Zecora, however, had a different goal. She wanted to make Apple Bloom come as fast as possible. It wasn't that she disliked the treatment being given to her, but she longed to say her fetish as well. If Apple Bloom gave more forceful, ticklish licks, it might just tide her over for a few more minutes. The aroused mare was sweating, her own toes curling as she licked, trying to resist the urge to come. The more she tried to hold it in, the more dizzy and lightheaded she felt. She had focused all of her concentration on not coming and worshipping the soul in front of her. Zecora took notice of this slower, more sensual lick, and tried to assist in her own favor. Wiggling her big toe, she managed to gently stroke up against Apple Bloom's clit, making her squirm and writhe, having it rubbed more vigorously. Apple Bloom grabbed the foot and squeezed it tight, holding it close to her face as she moaned, feeling her body loosen as she climaxed, the fluids from her body spurting out onto Zecora's soul. Her vision became blurred, the intensity of the orgasm making her more lightheaded than she was before. She laid back on the bed, closing her eyes and drifting off for a quick nap. Zecora sat upright on the bed, smirking at how much energy Apple Bloom lost due to the orgasm. "Oh, Apple Bloom, you've had your fun. You'll be laughing hard when I am done." Zecora removed herself from the bed, letting the unconscious Apple Bloom rest. In the meantime, the zebra took this time to prepare. From a chest, she shifted away various spices and herbs to reveal a set of stalks and some rope. Her bondage in hand, she sets to work Apple Bloom immobile. With swift, fluid movements, Apple Bloom's wrists were tied to the corners of the bed, and her ankles were set in the stalks. A turn of the key in the lock ensured that Apple Bloom's feet didn't have much leeway. Zecora decided to use some string to restrict her movement even more. Apple Bloom's toes had been pulled back by the gray hands and kept there in place by some expertly tied knots from the string wrapped around her toes. Now her toes could not even twitch, let alone curl. Her feet were rendered immobile. Now with her victim tied up, Zecora could focus on other preparations, such as specific tickle tools. Well, she preferred using her fingers because of the more natural feel to it. She wanted to get the most out of her experience as possible. Along with the scrubbing brush, she had a set of rather exotic-looking feathers, a bottle filled with pink liquid, a paintbrush in violet paint, and a few vibrators. While Zecora did get a sexual rush from tickling, she wanted to make sure that she could use both her hands while pleasuring herself. Now, finally prepared to begin her session, Zecora pulled up a chair and brought a colorful red and yellow feather up to Apple Bloom's yellow toes, stroking under the soft flesh. Apple Bloom started to stir, smacking her lips as she tries to sit up straight, but quickly finds that she could barely move. Her feet tried to curl, but it was all in vain, as the strings tying her toes back were tied well. "Zecora, what's going on?" Zecora continues to stroke the fully exposed toe with the feather. "I can see you're in a bind. It's just my time to unwind. While it may not be my profession, I hope you enjoy a tickling session." she chuckles. Apple Bloom desperately tried to snap the ropes, sit up straight, flare her legs, or just curl her feet, but found that she got no relief, as the slow stroking of feathers against her toes began to drive her crazy. No, too ticklish. Zecora ignored her pleas, trying to replace them with laughter as she slid the soft feathers down the yellow soles. Wait! I can't take it, she begged, flailing her body as far as the bondage would let her. This was much worse than whenever Applejack and Big Mac had tickled her. One would pin her down while the other tickled. There was some chance, although small, of breaking free. Here, tied up and locked in, there was absolutely no chance of her breaking out any time soon. Zecora simply chuckled as her ticklies pleased, shaking her head as she put down the feathers, switching out for her skillful fingers. She placed all 10 of her fingers on the delicate soles, slowly dragging them up and down. Apple Bloom's laughter changed into long, drawn-out squeals. Zecora's fingers were moving just fast enough that they would tickle, but slow enough that it didn't cause uncontrollable laughter. The feeling was just as maddening as the regular tickling. She had to force laughs out to make the feeling less torturous. She couldn't tell which was worse, the intense tickling or the sadistic teasing. Please, Zecora, just tickle me hard already, she whined, starting to bounce up and down on the mattress as much as she could. Zecora smirked. Apple Bloom had fallen into her trap. Well, since you asked and insisted, I'll need some tools so I can assist. Apple Bloom sighed in relief as the tickling sensations temporarily stopped. But her rest didn't last long, as she quickly felt bristles of a familiar scrubbing brush against her tender soles. Unsatisfied with feather rubbings, then how about some brushes scrubbing? While the apple apprentice did prefer the scrubbing over the feathers, it was choosing the lesser of two ticklish evils. It was still a torturous experience as she continued to thrash about as much as she could. However, she secretly enjoyed the attention her feet were getting, even if it wasn't the exact kind of attention she wanted. The zebra's nethers were starting to drip with arousal. She kept on scrubbing while she began to rub out her pent-up tension. Concentrating on two tasks was simple for Zecora, but it wasn't as efficient as it could be. To rectify this, she grabbed her vibrator, set it on the lowest setting, and inserted it into her. It would make for a slow orgasm, but she could use both of her hands for maximum tickling. With scrubbing brush in hand, she began to make quick strokes across her left foot, fingers wiggling against the toes on her right. Apple Bloom was in tears, her face more red than yellow, as she still made futile attempts to curl her toes. I can't, Zecora! Stop! Please! This is too much! Oh, Apple Bloom, this treatment's mild. I still have more ways to drive you wild. I'm nowhere near done with you, as there's much more I want to do, replied Zecora with a dark chuckle. Laughter continued to bubble up from within Apple Bloom, her feet trying to retract closer to her, only for the padded stalks to impede any progress. She couldn't even muster up the energy to beg for mercy. The sheer intensity of tickling overwhelmed her, and to learn that it was about to get worse made her both excited and worried for what was to come. After giving the soles a thorough brushing, Zecora took out the potion, giving Apple Bloom some much-needed rest. The mare gasped and sputtered, toes twitching, as her body went limp. Thank you, she wheezed out, attempting to catch her breath. Do not worry, you won't be fainting, but now it's time for some ticklish painting. Zecora grinned, bringing out the paint and the brushes. Apple Bloom gulped. She barely had time to recover properly, and the tickling was likely only going to get worse. Spinning one of the paintbrushes between her fingers, she began to drag the bristles down her feet just to test her ticklishness. Apple Bloom's reaction was almost violent. Struggling wildly, she burst out laughing. The intense scrubbing and tickling from before had left her feet more tender and sensitive than before. She shook her head back and forth as she tried to kick, but her feet remained stationary due to the expert bond Zecora had bound her feet with. No, 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 don't! After a few more strokes of the brush, Zecora stopped, smirking at her assistant. Sorry, my dear, but this was a feint. Now I'll actually start to paint. She chuckled, dipping the brush in the paint. She started out slow, circling the brush on her toes, giving them a fine coat of violet to complement the red and yellow of the rest of her feet. Apple Bloom started to shake due to the combination of the tickling and the cold paint being applied to her sensitive sores. Please, stop! Stop! She begged, trying to flail her arms on the bed. Zecora paid no mind to her pleas, continuing to paint until 10 of her toes were a fine violet, then came to the rest of her feet. On her right foot, she took her sweet time to draw her cutie mark on the soles, taking extra time on the spiral to make Apple Bloom squeal. As the brush tickled her incredibly sensitive and tender soles, the tickling sensation made Apple Bloom fall into silent laughter. Her chest moved up and down, but no laughter came out. Her limbs went limp, as all of her energy now went into laughing and trying to regain breath. The zebra stopped and gave the poor girl a few minutes, just to be merciful and have her catch her breath. When the break finally ended, Zecora got to work painting the other foot. On the left foot, she began to play a game of tic-tac-toe on her sole by herself, making sure to make a big game board to have it drag on as long as possible with the most amount of moves. To Apple Bloom, she couldn't tell what was going on, as her body only registered the ticklish brushing against her soul. She was laughing so hard she didn't have the energy or strength to beg anymore. Finally, the game was finished. Zecora stopped to admire her handiwork. Despite being painted on a laughing canvas, the picture of her cutie mark was surprisingly accurate. Enjoy this break, for while I wait, I will tell you this will escalate. But not to worry, I see your crotch. I'll relieve you when I kick it up a notch. Apple Bloom moaned, weakly thrusting her groin up and down, her pussy still dripping due to the original brew she drank. Without the tickling, her focus was back on how turned on she was. She visualized Zecora's gray feet rubbing all over her body, hoping that was what Zecora was planning to do for her while being tickled. But please, I want to come so bad. Zecora took the pink liquid, pouring it on Apple Bloom's reddened soles, watching as it trickled down, covering most of the surface area. Then she grabbed the miniature vibrators and taped them onto her painted soles. Before Apple Bloom could ask what was going on, Zecora had turned on the vibrators, and they began their assault on her softened toes. Ordinarily, it would already tickle like crazy, but due to the potion that was splashed onto her feet, it made them magnitudes more sensitive. 3 seconds in, and she was already begging for mercy. Another 3 seconds and her begs were reduced to incoherent babbling. Zecora wasn't done. She only attached the vibrators so that her feet were occupied. Now she could pay attention to Apple Bloom's pussy while still getting wild, uncontrollable laughter out of her. She walked to the side of the bed, moaning as she finally orgasmed, her mare juices squirting out and dripping down the vibrator. But she still had to satisfy her assistant. So she crawled on top of her, placing the feet she knew she loved so much by her face, while she focused on Apple Bloom's wet marehood. She began licking in slow, long licks to her inner walls, stopping at the clit. Apple Bloom's eyes were shut tight, tears welling up in her eyes as she laughed hysterically. She felt the pair of zebra soles press against her cheeks, and she felt a slight comfort. Even though she couldn't fully enjoy it, it did feel nice to be near a soft, clean pair of soles. When her wet sex was finally properly stimulated, she let out a long moan of relief that interrupted her bout of laughter, but quickly returned to her laughing fit. Zecora continued to lick in broad strokes, making sure to cover as much surface area as she possibly could with each lick. her soft soles pressed against Apple Bloom's face, the balls of her feet moving in circular motions on her cheek. Apple Bloom bucked her hips, writhing in ticklish agony and unbelievable pleasure as her naked, sweaty body shook from all the stimulation. She was so close. It would only take a bit more to make the dam break. Ready for the big finish at Apple Bloom's orgasm, the zebra alternated between the broad strokes to her marehood and sucking on her clit. All the stimulations on her body made her mind go numb, the sensations driving her wild as they coursed through her body as fast as lightning. All Apple Bloom remembered was crying out in pure ecstasy as her body trembled, finally allowed to climax after so much ticklish torture. The bedsheets received another stain due to the powerful orgasm. Even after the release, the vibrators were still working on her soles, and Zecora was still lapping at her nethers, leaving her a giggling, babbling mess. A few minutes after the orgasm, Zecora finally finished the session. She removed the vibrators and freed Apple Bloom from her bonds. While she didn't sit up, her toes began to wiggle, relieved that they could finally move. To alleviate the ticklish sensations, Zecora began to gently rub her tender soles, much to Apple Bloom's delight. Apple Bloom sighed in relief, her arousal wearing off as the potion's effect started to diminish. She was too tired to move, and simply relaxed as her ticklish feet were being tenderly massaged. "So, Apple Bloom, now that we're through, did you enjoy my special brew?" Zecora asked, pressing her fingers against her painted toes. "Yeah, it's great. I want to do it again sometime. Just need to rest," she replied weakly. "I understand this takes its toll. Next time, I'll have you in control. We'll take our turn, and we'll make it fair. Does that seem fine, ticklish mare?" Apple Bloom gave a thumbs up before falling asleep due to fatigue, snoring on the bed, a wild grin still stuck on her face. Zecora smiled, still rubbing her soles to keep her relaxed. "You've earned this rest, I do concede, so take all the time you need. I've had my fix and I cannot wait, and I know you'll want to retaliate. I know we'll have fun, for I have found things are always better after the first round." Hello, thank you so much for listening. This was a commissioned piece, and the commissioner would like to remain anonymous, so I respect his decision. Every time, man, I hate that word. I always slip up every time. Wow, sorry that peaked, but every time, man, I always mess up on that word. Decision. It's kind of I don't know what's decision. I think it's the C bit in between that really gets me off. But whatever, that's my problem, not yours. I really hope you enjoyed. This one's more based on tickling than the other ones that I've been commissioned to do. So, if that's what you're into, I hope you enjoyed. But I don't know about this story, man. Alright, so I'm gonna play this small recording thing this small outburst, more like, that what's the word? It just happened. That kind of encapsulates my feelings for this whole story and more particularly the writing of it. Come on! This writing is so shit, man! What the fuck? Yeah, not my brightest moment, but whatever. Yeah, I think that's my feelings on the writing of the poem, not the poem. Oh my god! Sorry, I've been doing a lot of poem stuff and Othello and stuff that things slip in. Sorry, but that's my overall thought on the writing style. I know the person said that he's not the best writer, but still, I can always critique things. A lot of the times he just repeats certain phrases or words, like souls. Souls comes up so many times. It's ridiculous. But whatever. That's neither here or there. And yeah. What else there to talk about? Since I really do want to bring this thing over to 40 minutes. So do you guys play any instruments, by the way? That would be nice to know. It's always nice to know if anyone plays an instrument. Personally, I play guitar, but what is there but about? I do it recreationally, not. I'm not in a band or anything. I just do it for fun. Well, seems like we hit 40 minutes. So until next time, bye bye.